Thinking of where to go to? Be on board with Dr.Reju.
Good evening and welcome to Answers with Dr.Reju, where critical life issues are clarified. My name is Lois and I'm in the studio with Joanne. Joanne, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And of course, Dr.Reju, the Chief Resource Person of the Center for Transformational Leadership, CTL JUST. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Lois. Thanks, Joanne. How are you guys doing?
Fine.
Keeping safe?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. Today we'll be looking at crime and justice, human and sexual violence. If you missed out on our last episode, don't worry, just visit our website at answerswithdrreju.org to listen to all our previous episodes. And so today we'll be talking about, like I said, crime and justice, human and sexual violence. There's been a lot of protests and outpouring of anger in the last couple of weeks. People organizing protests here and there as a way to stand up against the rise in violence and crime and the motionless nature of the justice system in Nigeria. Over the past weeks, Nigeria has recorded a widespread increase in sexual violence and police brutality. The Sun newspaper dated 12th May 2020 says, "Protest rocks Abuja over killing of 52-year-old man by police." In this case, it was gathered that the protest began after a police team went to arrest a suspect and in the process opened fire that killed the 52-year-old, observing the COVID-19 stay-at-home order. After the incident, the police allegedly ran away, leaving the lifeless body on the ground. On the same day, 12th May in Jos, Plateau State, Rinji Peter Bala, a 300-level student of University of Jos, security personnel in Zaria Road during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. He was shot dead on that day. And then a 16-year-old high school student called Tina Ezekwe was shot and killed after police opened fire at a bus stop in Lagos, the country's biggest city, during the nighttime coronavirus curfew. And last week, Wednesday, Vera Uwalia Omozua, a 22-year-old microbiology student, sought the quiet of her empty church in Benin City, southern Nigeria, as a place to study. Hours later, she was raped and killed in a crime that has sparked so much protest in and across Nigeria. The rape tags make rounds on Twitter as Jigawa Police spokesman SP Abdul Jinjiri confirms the arrest of 11 people who allegedly raped and molested the 12-year-old girl. In April, an 18-year-old lady known as Jennifer was allegedly attacked and raped by a gang of 5 men in Kaduna, a city in northern Nigeria. Now, the only way to peace is justice. What will justice in Nigerian rape case look like, sir?
Well, rape is not it's not a Nigerian thing. It's a global thing, and I kind of like the whole sudden surge of protest, and all those kind of things. It was at a certain time, for those who are very conversant with international news, it was a major problem in India, and but I don't want to sound like a cracking record. I hope you guys understand, that phrase. Many times we look at these issues, we want to look at them, we don't get the whole picture. We don't get the whole picture. We talk about them when incidences happen. And they say prevention is better than cure. But when an incident happens, you just sort of get a buzz. Once it fizzles out, everybody goes quiet. That's not how to solve a problem. That's not how to solve a problem. So we have to understand that when there's a rape, we need to, trace it. When there is police brutality, we need to trace it. If you can't, in medicine, if you can't do, accurate, proper diagnosis, cure is impossible. And if an ailment can be diagnosed, sometimes in medicine, they want to do what they call explorative surgery, which is really very, very dangerous. And that's what we've been doing, with all these kind of cases. I unfortunately have been involved in one particular rape case, which is very troubling, because these are friends. And the guy took advantage of the girl. And, it was so bad. I wanted to see that guy go to jail. You see, talking personally, and this is not a joke, this is not reactive. If I'm asked to prefer like a punishment for rape, I will actually prefer death sentence. Right? Because one, except that person can be adjudged to be mentally unbalanced. Because for me it's cowardly, and for a policeman to shoot to death an unarmed person is cowardly. But that's looking at it on the surface. Because what's happening in America right now, what's happening among, all this kind of rape. You see, when you look at rape and you talk about every other thing and you don't talk about the family, we're missing the point. The rapist and the raped are from a family. Sometimes what makes rape continue to go unabated is lack of report. The victims don't talk about it. Why? Fear of stigmatization. Now that's a cultural thing. And you see, most times the fear of stigmatization is actually aggravated by who? Those they trust. Most girls who suffer rape, maybe they tell their mom. Right? You know what the mom is likely to say? Don't tell anybody. Why? If you let people know you've been raped, who will marry you? So these are the issues that are there. So when we talk about the act, we miss the root. The boy that will go out and rape someone, something has gone wrong with the way that guy has been raised. Right? Because you see, one thing that thrills some of us that I grew up, I lived my teenage years, 70s, 80s, and one thing that thrills us is that we can go, woo a girl, right? We can go woo a girl, and it's a lot of plan and excitement that goes into it. It's a thrill, right? It's a thrill. But today, a lot of these boys they're cowards. They think it's being macho that you rape a girl. I don't, those who rape are kind of, in my own generation, maybe they are kind of high on something. And they might have developed a kind of relationship. Let's look at, because we have to take it to the family. If a minor is raped, that case too is there. Minors, 8, 9, even younger.
3.
If you look at that, the person, the predator, this perpetrator, most of the time, they are known people. They are family. They are people they trust. Right? They are people they trust. So when we talk about that, the parents are not even spoken about. How come? Because a lot of parents are not observant. I raise girls, and I know many schools. I remember a time I went to see my daughter in school. She was in boarding house, and I've not seen her for a long while. And I sat in the boarding house mistress office, and she came and she sat on my lap, right? And the boarding house mistress wasn't there. A teacher was passing by and came in and said, "Excuse me, sir, who are you? Why is she sitting on your lap? Are you the dad?" And I said, "Yes." Right? Because those are things in many places we take for granted. A girl can't just sit on somebody's lap. What kind of education goes on in homes? What kinds of orientation? Like, in when you do, because a lot of us are not security conscious. They tell in places, police, where they maybe I'll come to that. If you are being confronted with a rapist, because we can also use this opportunity to educate. If you are being confronted with a rapist, don't shout help, shout fire. Right? Don't shout help, shout fire. If you shout help, those who are around too might feel threatened and they don't come. So shout fire. Right? That's how these things are. But now we have a police system all over the world that are victims of history. I'll give you an example of the police in Nigeria. The police in Nigeria was set up, right, to help colonialists subdue citizens. Right? The police in the United States was set up to subdue black people and the minorities. They have not been reformed. That's why today the police still see themselves as an agent of oppression, of suppression. Same for Nigeria. Same for Nigeria. So we really don't tell the whole story, because the police in Nigeria are not trained for this kind of things. A girl go to the police station to go and report that she was raped. The question they will ask you, they say, what were you doing there? What were you wearing? And those kind of things. But you see, the whole story has to be told. Many times, because protests are reactive, they are just emotionally charged. They said, don't ask what the girl is wearing, train your boys well. It's not either or. It's both and. And when I talk to ladies groups, I tell them there are a lot of cultural issues, social issues that you have to use your platform to address. The culture of nudity, right? Because the whole narrative about marriage, right, that makes boys look like as if they are not in a girl's life, or the girl believes that if the boy is not in my life, I am a misfit. These are the things fueling it. There are many girls in relationship, and nobody wants you to talk about it. They don't want you to talk about the girl. It's about the boy. Both of them are victims. Both of them are victims. So we are telling the stories from, we're not telling the whole story. That's the point there. We're not telling the whole story. But for me, it starts from the family. Just check the whole trail of a rapist. By the time you look at it with soft eyes, the way they use it in detective business, you discover that it goes right down to the family. And that's the issue that we're having. We're losing that, especially in Africa. I was hearing someone this morning talking about child rights. That's un-African. A child does not have rights. You can't give rights to someone who doesn't understand relation. That's from the West. A child does not have rights. The child only need protection. It's not a right to have a parent. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. Right? It's something that is needed. You don't claim it as right. No. A child can have right. The child, because when you say the child has a right for parental protection, you have to define the right. Because you can't hold that child responsible for anything. That child can't vote. Why don't you, insist that the child should be able to vote? In Africa, children are protected. They are protected. And these are things we have to go back to. These kids are not, I'm an educationist. I see how irresponsible parents have become. I keep saying that here. That's why I said that maybe I'm going to sound like a cracked record. Right? Parents are the problem. There's no parenting. We have been, because I hear that in the North, the reason might be wrong. In the North, they have not accepted the Child Rights Act. The reason might be faulty because they promote the predominant religion in the North promotes child marriage, which is evil in itself, which doesn't make sense, right? Scientifically, socially, emotionally, it doesn't make any sense. Any kind of practice or tradition that promotes child marriage, like Peter Touch said, that person must be coming from the zoo. So these are things that we have to look at from all sides. From all sides. And I'm not talking about Islam. There are a lot of Muslims who won't buy that. It's a cultural thing. And by the way, both Christianity and Islam are all imported. By the way, it has to fit into our culture. We have to look at who will Muhammad look like a Hausa man. Who will Jesus look like a Biram man. That's how to practice faith. So all these sort of things need to be put in proper perspective. When you borrow culture, you find yourself in trouble. Child rights is a taboo in Africa. A child shouldn't have rights. The child should be protected, and that's not a right. That's a responsibility of someone else. These are things Africa need to find themselves. We think it's civilization. Who forced us to adopt child rights? UNICEF. You know the biggest donor of UNICEF? It's a promoter of witchcraft. We don't understand these things. If anybody should teach the world about witchcraft, it should be the women and the men in my village. So that you know witchcraft. We can't come from Europe. We are the author. So that we know how to practice it well. But we are kind of messed up. I'm sorry I've taken so much time on this.
You're going to go on a short break.
One question, we're going to break.
And
all right.
We'll be back.
Thinking of where to go to? Be on board with Patrice Radio.
You're welcome back from the break. Before we went on the break, we've been talking about justice. Yes, we've been talking about crime and justice, human and sexual violence. Joanna has a question to ask.
Okay, sir. So from all you've said, it's obvious that we have a problem in our families to educate our children properly on sex and all that. So at what time or what age or level do you think is appropriate for us to expose our children to all they need to know about sex? Because most parents, especially in Africa, are very scared to, outrightly come out and talk to their children about sex.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Something to run away from, and they are shy away.
And I want to ask, what should we educate them about? Because there's a particular stage, like she was asking, at what age? And then at that age, what do we ask? What are we allowed to teach or tell them?
Now, first of all, all kids they don't develop the same way. So this might be child specific, it might be home specific. But first of all, on a broad level, there's a whole environment you want to create around the home where sex, one, is not something secret. The reason people abuse sex is because it's kept away from them. And then it wakens up curiosity. And then when you are curious about something, you want to experiment. And to experiment means that you don't have enough information about that thing. So it depends, but there must first of all be a general, there's something I always use. There's a whole series of books, but again, when you read those kind of books, you have to always also put it in context because they are written by Westerners. But sex is something that is kind of human. So a child, for example, that book, the book 1, the story of sex begins with, that's first session says, the story of me, how I came to be. Right? Because a lot of parents, they allow their kids to get to a point of curiosity. The information you give them must precede their curiosity before they begin to ask, right? Those unanswered questions must have been, those unasked questions must have been answered, right? When do you start teaching a child parts of your body? Maybe when you're bathing him or her. Yeah. Maybe when you're bathing him or her. What's the difference between you, if it's a girl, and the boy? Right? Why do you... Because if they come to ask you, you are now on a reactive mode. You must have said that. The parts of... You see, we are very secretive in our culture. And that's the point. It wasn't like that. You see, I visited my... Maybe I've told that story many times. I visited my village, a couple of times when I was younger. And my village is in the riverine area. The whole village, bathe in the river. And women are topless. Yeah. Women are topless. Right? And in that kind of place, you can't, because there's a way, laws are unwritten, but they are written in people's minds and hearts. Because when you do something wrong in that kind of a community, whatever you do right has communal effect. Whatever you do wrong has communal effect. Right? So they might not have done proper formal sex education in that kind of context, but as a way of raising community that makes you know your boundary. But in this very sort of pseudo-educated world that we find ourselves, we have to be more intentional, because information flies around. For your own child, it depends on when you begin to talk to the child. Information must come from you. This is what this is. This is what this is. This is what this is. Right? For many parents, it's a shock to them the day your boy or your girl, exactly is common with girls, when they put a notice, when they have their room and they put a notice on the door, knock before you enter, they are already asking some questions. They are already conscious of their body. Right? So before it gets to that point, right, you must have told that girl or that boy some things. A boy must not start having, wet dreams unannounced. He must know. Because the science, all the developmental signs are there. But parents, I doubt if they know these things. Again, how many parents know when the voice of the boy breaks? We can't trace it. Right? So, and today, girls, I don't know if it's diet or whatever, they grow up quickly. And the place to start talking about menstrual cycle is not about sexual intercourse. It should start with hygiene. Right? So that's a safe place to start. So is it the discussion of when people talk about sex education, their mind goes to sexual intercourse. That's not the point. It's sex education. Right? Why do you think they call gender sex? Have you ever, in most forms, they write sex. They ask whether you are male or female. So it must begin with identity, not an act. So we're always scared. So parenting is critical in this day and age. So sex education is not something you learn in school. School complements it. It should start from home. How many parents we have, like if they are Christians, they have what they call their morning devotion in the morning and the topic is sex. Everybody starts stammering. Right? How did I enter your tummy, mommy? You start stammering. Right? Yeah. You see, we need to be open, because sex, like I always tell people, is the most obvious thing in life. I'm looking at Joanne, I'm looking at Lois. You don't have to tell me your parents had sex. That's why you're here. I'm here because my parents had sex.
Some of the replies we got is came from heaven. Where did I come from? Tell us.
It's a lie. You didn't come from heaven. You came out of love between your parents, and they had sexuality. There's nobody coming from heaven who has ever been there and come back to tell us. You don't come from any kind of heaven. Right? Your dad crushed on your mom, they got married, and it should be open. Whatever you keep secret, people will look for it. You see, let's look at it. Sex is for pleasure. I can't imagine that someone who rapes a girl had pleasure. Yeah. So what's the point?
Both of them.
Both of them. Okay. Both of them. The pleasure is only when there is mutual consent. Right? I don't see the fun in that. It's just, the boy is just trying to be macho. That's the point. There's no fun there. There's no pleasure there. Right? There's no pleasure. It's horrible, because the one I said that I had to, I wanted to ensure, but again we had to settle because the boy was remorseful. He had to trace down to the family. He's very dysfunctional because he used his dog to cower the girl and their friends, and the girl trusted him. That's why the girl visited their friends. And I told that boy, you're a coward. In our day, it was so tough to talk to a girl. It's easier in your own day. Girls are looking for boyfriends. And that's one thing also that we need to look at. So from childhood, you need to tell a girl how they expose themselves to the opposite gender, how to relate with, the opposite gender, where the line should be drawn, and all those kind of, unsolicited touches, yeah. That girl must be taught when to say no, and the boy too must be taught you don't touch a girl that way. Right? There's some things that are not done, and there's some things that can be done.
So I want you to just quickly share how you think we got to the point where men or rapists feel when they rape another person, it gives them satisfaction, or they feel macho or something. It's not true.
It's where they are victims of society. You see, it's more when you're talking about satisfaction. Let me talk from a human psychological standpoint. What satisfies a human, right? Is something you get out of, productive effort, right? It's more, it's more gratifying when you chase the girl, right? It's more gratifying. Yeah. It's when you work and you do all kinds of things. You send a card, you go and be a friend of a friend so that you can talk to her. That's more fun. But this violence, and those kind of a thing. So it's not really fun. It's it's gangsterism. It's influenced by a lot of other things, because it's not about sexual urge. No, if it's truly sexual urge, I don't know how it works out, but it's just, that's not sex. That's just a violation, of someone else. It's a violation. That's not sex. To rape someone that's not sex. Right? Yeah. It's horrible. And you see, it's systemic. The reason it goes unchecked is because we've not been able to build a system where such things are seen the way we, it might be an English word, but it means much to us. It's a taboo. It's a taboo, and we've not been too open with it. Like I said, there's no education, because if people are educated about sex, it's something you want to, that you want to treasure, right? It's something you want to, where is the I've seen parents tell their daughters, right, that you have to be pregnant before you are married, so that whether the man, and they tell the boy too, make sure she's pregnant before you marry her, in case she won't be able to produce children, and all those kind of things. You see, we have a cultural defect. We have abandoned the place. You see, in early days, one major activity of a wedding ceremony is when the boy comes out with a stained white handkerchief. What does that mean? She's a virgin. But now you say that, and everybody look at it as very uncouth because we speak English. Then human dignity was in place, right? So it's about education from childhood. Yeah, that child needs to be taught sex. Yeah. As fun. For pleasure, not for rearing kids.
Okay, we're going to go on another break and we'll be back for more. Stay with us.
Thinking of where to go to? Be on board with Patrice Radio.
You're welcome back from the break. During the break, I was asking a question. I'll just ask it. I said that this is where we are right now.
Yeah.
We've established that rape is as a result of probably lack of education and homes, and you gave some other reasons why we've gotten to this point.
Yeah.
Now my question is, how can we handle these situations? If they take these people to court, some people will say let them kill. We'll choose.
Like I said, when I say if I have my way, unfortunately, one person can have his or her way to make the law. But I'll tell you something about law, right? Courts are courts of law. They are not courts of justice. So people put their confidence in the courts. Law cannot stop the trend of rape, even if you kill. Because until you deal with the cause, right, and which is justice, courts are not courts of justice, right? Justice happens when, you remove the reason why people will do that. Because all we're talking about rape, the motivations are power, sometimes economic, sometimes some occultic, sometimes some, sort of social status that you want to get to. Because when you talk about occultic powers, you can there was a time, the reason why HIV, the cases had a spike in South Africa was because they said if you are HIV positive and you have sex with a virgin, you will be healed. And they started raping virgins. So these are the kind of things that we have to correct in our system, right? Those because many of these guys, maybe they've seen one herbalist somewhere who tells them, if you sleep with this girl, you are going to have money. Those reasons are there. And we can't deny it. And girls also have to understand, in your quest for money, one old man somewhere, takes you somewhere, he's trying to, because we've used this our Bature kind of culture to explain away some things. Occultic power is real. It's real. Evil is real. If good is real, evil is real. Right? So this sort of things, why would a girl, want to, date a married man? So you see, the whole sex culture, there is a need for and when we talk about society, again, it goes back to the family. The whole sex culture need to be rephrased, because there is so much sex in terms of talk, because now you see a beautiful shoe, it's a sexy shoe, it's a sexy book, you want to have a sexy look. The whole sex thing, we need to define it. It's something that everybody has to take responsibility. And all this other, activism, they've hijacked it. All the Me Too, they bring back our girls, the Black Lives Matter. You see, activism is just diagnosis of an ailment. Right? It doesn't treat it. It takes leadership, which begins from the home, to provide a cure. Right? For 400 years, we have been fighting, slavery, colonialism, and all those kind of things. Look at all the whole trouble happening in America. I've always had my own perspective that that's not the whole story. Until I got somebody this morning, I woke up to that video, and I think I shared with some people this morning, who said that guy, when he was, what led to his arrest? Nobody's asking. We don't tell the whole stories. This guy walked into a shop to buy cigarette with fake $20 bill. That was why they called the police. We're only talking about it's very horrible the way he was killed. But we have to tell the whole story. This is a serial criminal. This George Floyd. He's a serial criminal. He's been to jail. He had a story of pointing a gun at a pregnant woman's belly where they robbed the home. He went to jail for that part. That day he was arrested, he had cocaine on him. He was high. Those stories are not told.
I think they're not being told because it's believed that it doesn't justify.
It doesn't. You can't tell stories in part. That's what I'm saying. Nothing can justify. You don't kill him because you have cocaine on him, right? But the fact is, why will he be high on cocaine? So by the time we begin to ask all those questions, all of us will take responsibility. If one guy rapes, the society is guilty. For every young girl that is raped, the society is guilty. When we begin to drive that conversation that way, you begin to see some, that's where we begin to ask, why will a boy raised in this community grow up to become somebody who will rape? We need to ask questions on our conversations. The things, why is there so much rush for money in this country? Where politicians display it. Dino Melaye will come and show the picture of all his cars. Those are the kind of things that will, generate this greed. The politicians promote greed. Because you see someone who has never worked, has a lot of money. He has not set up a business, has a lot of money. So we want to get the money anyhow. So society must you don't just isolate the victim. And now the way you deal with the victim, because you don't get justice by sending the guy to jail. Right? Yeah. There might be more to that. So we tell stories in part.
Okay. Now, back to police brutality in Nigeria. We have a lot of Nigerians who have gone on Twitter to start hashtags, and then a lot of protests have been done. How far do you think these measures will go in getting justice done in Nigeria?
I spoke about protests being just a diagnosis.
Yes.
And when for example, the law about rape, how stupid. The law about rape, before the rapist can be convicted, there must be a witness. The day I had that,
here in Nigeria,
I said the law is really stupid. Who will be there witnessing and now come and say, I saw him? That there must be a witness before the guy can be convicted. So it's a mess. It's a mess. So you see, laws can be manipulated. That's why you always hear that word lacuna. Laws will always give spaces for manipulation. So politicians, evil people, inaccurate set of human beings, right, will manipulate it to perpetuate corruption in society. Right? Good people also, when you find yourself in position of influence, you manipulate the law for human good. That's how it's done. You can't have a perfect law. The law doesn't make anything, it doesn't make anything perfect. Yeah, you can't get anything good out of law, right? But you can use it lawfully. And there's also the possibility of using it unlawfully. There will always be. That's why if you have a good lawyer, a murderer who shot somebody down on the street can be freed, depending on how good the lawyer is. Even if it's so obvious. I mean, the law will say that you are innocent until proven. You have to prove it beyond. So law is not where the hope is. It's justice. is justice. And justice requires, that foundation where everybody wants the good of society. And it begins from the home. Courts are not courts of justice. They are courts of law. The one who can argue wins the case. Right? Yeah. That's why murderers can walk free, rapists can walk free. Why will anyone, by the way, say the government of the land will say that even if you are a rapist, you are entitled to defend yourself? The government will even spend money to give you a lawyer. That's how they said they get justice. No. That's corruption. These are things we inherited from the West.
But sir, is it not possible that they are doing that in the case of, let's say, the person was accused
wrongly?
Yes.
You see, there is a possibility of being accused wrongly, right? There's a possibility. Those things are there, and those things happen. The person too who will accuse wrongly comes from a dysfunctional background. For what purpose? I have a cousin who went to jail, in the UK, who was accused wrongly. You know who testified against this accuser? The mother at the appeal. That was what freed my cousin. The mother of the girl came to court on the appeal that she's a serial liar. Now, I'll take it further. Why would that woman lie? By the time you dig further, she's going through a troubled marriage. What led to the whole thing? She said the husband is losing interest in her because after she gave birth to the first child, she started adding weight. How did we get to the point where you can't say fat woman again now? Is so, we are so dysfunctional. Why did we get to a point where you marry someone, she's adding weight, and then you no longer get attracted to her? If the adding weight is a problem, why can't we see it as our problem? You see, these are the issues. On justice is when society begins to take responsibility, right? So that even if it's your son that rapes, you are the first person to bring the son out. That's when we get justice. But many of us will protect it. We want to, we protect it.
Okay, sir. I want to quickly just ask this because when this whole rape issue started, I was looking at it from the point of view of, okay, a human being was being raped. But then we began to have issues of, no, it was a male, a female, more females are being raped than males, right? And so many guys have been coming up to talk that the fact that men don't talk about it doesn't mean men are not being raped. So we now looked at it, maybe it's because of their ego, the society. How do we break this ice of men not speaking out when they have the same situations?
You know that most men that are raped are young boys. Yeah.
But there are cases of adults too that maybe a couple of ladies could gang raped the person.
Yeah, I mean, again, narratives, right? There's a way, for example, there is no, if a boy goes through that kind of experience, I can tell you, he will tell his friends. Yeah.
He might not.
No, he will, I'm telling you how boys behave. They and the friends will dress it that you're good. Yeah. You see, that's where sex education comes in. Sex has been painted as something the boy does to a girl, not what they do together. Yeah. You see, when you see the right way to announce pregnancy by a couple is, we are pregnant, not my wife is pregnant. We are expecting a baby. We are pregnant. That's the correct way. So we've seen, for example, if two, and these things are so ingrained in our consciousness. Even when maybe in a football match, and this team wins. And there's a kind of a pattern, where this particular team always win, like Arsenal always win Tottenham, right? They'll say, Arsenal is Tottenham husband any day, right? So it's like the boys grow up to see themselves as champions, and one of the ways of expressing that victory is by sex. We need to change that narrative. There need to be a lot of reorientation. That's why I said, if I have opportunity to maybe to influence those in government, as we are putting money in education, in health, we should also invest heavily, vote enough money to orientation. Society is not being, we're not having accurate narratives. There's a way these things should go into school curriculum. It should go into the way, when you are going to rate a movie. For example, I was using the advert of a bank in Nigeria to train some group of artists, and I give them some checklists. In this short clip, if I'll tell you, is the advert of UBA, and check any other advert. I'm not putting UBA down, right? Check it. The boxes. How is a man portrayed? How is a girl portrayed? How is wealth portrayed? If you see that boy that started that advert, he was in jeans and t-shirt. So jeans and t-shirt is poverty, right? Wearing suit is success. By the time the guy wore the suit, all the girls were looking at him. That's where people are being educated. The guy sits, a girl serves him coffee, not a boy. That's success. And then he's talking to some people with so much arrogance. That's success. You see, those things, that's where we get education from. In that whole 2 minutes advert, girls are not, the female are not, they are nothing. They're just one who is just, looking at a successful man, with, I hope he will just talk to me. I hope he will ask me for my phone number. And girls like it. I wish me too will go there. Not coming as victims. Because these things are fraud. All this Me Too is millions of dollars. All this bring back our girls. All this Black Lives Matter. Those who carry placards are just unfortunate victims. The people making the money are behind the scene. That's why these protests are hijacked. Most of these advocacy groups have been hijacked. I have personal stories to tell because I've been involved in advocacy. Right? So when even the regulatory bodies want to, approve a movie, they should check how is a woman portrayed, how is a man portrayed, how is a young boy portrayed. Those things, they educate more. That's where justice can come from. Where this one will not fly. Why should a girl be looking at a guy with so much affection because the guy is now wearing suit, and then they are now in the car, and the guy is leaning on the guy, and the guy opens the UBA app. Girls like money. That's the subliminal message. Those are the things these feminists should fight. That advert clip is not acceptable. And that's what we find everywhere. That's what we find. Right? Those are that's where people grow up to see girls as just tools. It's a sex symbol. It's a sex tool. You want to advertise a battery, there must be a naked girl there. And girls like it. Yeah? So girls too have a role to play. Women groups, girls groups, they have a role to play. That you are somebody without a man. My heart goes out to parents raising girls and raising boys. There is a way, if you don't track it when they're young, it becomes almost impossible. The psychological fact is that between the age of 4 and 14, what a child hasn't learned, he will never learn it, or it becomes extremely difficult to learn it. Between age 4 and 14. But there are many things. The girl is young, you're already calling her somebody's wife. That's where those kind of things. So the girl grew up. If a boy doesn't come, propose to me, I'm a misfit. When he's dressing up in the morning, he has a boy in mind. How will he see me? Right? That's the point.
We've come to the point where we draw the curtains. And if you're listening or you're just joining us and you've missed this episode, you can go to our website at answerswithdrreju.org to stream on all our previous episodes. We'll see you next week for another exciting episode. Always remember to wash your hands or use alcohol-based sanitizers. Wear your face masks when you're in public places, and please remember, coronavirus is not a death sentence. Stay safe for yourself and us.
Thinking of where to go to? Be on board with Patrice Radio.